and mortgage rates are absolutely ridiculous. As of current, I think they're almost touching 8%. It's absolutely bananas.
Everybody's fighting for the last piece of real estate that's actually nice, move-in ready.
But I really do think there should be very strict government regulation on businesses and corporations being able to buy, I believe, at least single-family homes.
You have to find that deal. The deal is the most important part, which it's the hardest thing to get right now.
In this beautiful episode, we are going to talk renting versus owning, and we have both sides because you currently are building and you own, and I rent with Jess. Were we looking to buy? Yes, but with the market the way it is right now, where supply is low and the supply is overpriced and mortgage rates are absolutely ridiculous. As of current, I think they're almost touching 8%. It's absolutely bananas.
Mm-hmm.
And from a recent study that I saw, mortgage payments are, the average mortgage payment is $3,000. New all-time high. And then there was another statistic in there that was also on all-time, and I think it was low. I would have to think about it or find that article again. But yeah, it's our rent's $3,200 where we're at right now, and that's crazy for a 850 square foot apartment.
But it's also Chicago, I mean.
But it's downtown Chicago, and it's a luxury building with amenities. So am I justifying the price? No. But do I have to pay extra for another gym membership and possibly a membership for like a gym membership that has a pool, because we have a pool and a hot tub? So, I mean, does that matter in a sense? And I was talking to somebody a couple days ago, if we wouldn't be moving to a place that we know, like here, our next move would be, instead of a high rise or multi like dozen unit plus building, we would try and find a 2-flat or a 3-flat where it's an individual investor that, as long as it had in-unit laundry, all the amenities could go away, as long as the rent would be a lot cheaper. Because it's crazy. How can we save right now to pay off some debt and also save to put a down payment on something so we can put roots down and start the family? It's crazy.
It is crazy right now. Very crazy. That's why I think at this moment, it's tough because it's always like buying is so much better, right? Anything, because you own the asset after you pay it off. But I think it really comes down to your goals, what you want to do, and the current times, right? And at this time, I think for almost everybody, unless you're looking to stay at a place for years, like we're talking about 15, 20, 30 years, I think renting right now might be the better option, okay?
Even you're saying staying 2 decades plus?
No, not renting 2 decades plus. I'm saying if you're going to buy and you're going to stay at the house 2 decades plus, then I think buying is
okay, because you said it the other way. Okay.
But yeah, so for sure buying. And
I would say I wouldn't even go that long. Honestly, 5-7 years. If you're going to stay somewhere 5 or 7 years, even not even a house, a condo, even if you're single, right? And maybe you're dating somebody, but it's not like move-in ready. Even if it's I know 1 bed, 1 baths are harder to resell, But if you're going to be living somewhere, at least for 5+ years, I even think that would be the better option to buy a 1-bed, 1-bath. And then if it's time to relocate, whether it's for a job or a business somewhere else, and you can't offload that asset, I honestly wouldn't even try to sell that piece because rent it out.
Right.
Make sure when you're buying, though, if you're in a building, high rise, because I know certain high rises don't allow rentals. So you got to make sure when you're looking at that.
And that's the thing. The important key here is the offloading the building later. So yes, it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10, 20 years, right? But the key thing is the offloading. So what I mean by that is if you're buying today, right, and in 7 years, the prices are lower than what you bought it for and significantly lower, then that's when it's kind of like, I don't know if it's a good idea, right? Because currently you're overpaying for everything, okay? Especially if it's nice, okay? Everybody's fighting for the last piece of real estate that's actually nice, move-in ready, and those are the ones that still are selling for crazy amounts
way
of
over
money.
asking.
Way over asking,
and
right?
even the asking price is ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's even tough to find something that's not even in good shape, right? Those people are still asking
high amounts
because that's what, right, the
market serves.
Market serves, but not even necessarily, because I see those places not selling anymore, right? Because they need a lot of work done and things like that. So those are kind of already starting to, you could see drop because people are no longer willing to pay those prices for those properties. But the other properties that are like move-in ready, they're still asking for kind of whatever they want to ask, and people are still buying them. So now if you're going to pay for that today, right, knowing that eventually, in my opinion, markets are going to correct, because at this moment, the only thing that's holding it all back is the supply, right? Once we get supply back up, which no one knows how long it's going to take, but in my opinion, it's going to happen, well, prices of everything is going to drop, right? Significantly at that point, because there's just going to be so much supply where it's going to be like back in the day where people have so many options, right? Everything drops. So now you buy something today, let's say for $700,000, and that same house in 5 years is worth, if it happens in 5 years, $500,000. Well, you lost a lot of money at that point. So now your only situation is, do you have enough money to buy something else and rent that property so that it could, you're going to have time to wait while you're renting it out for another 10 years or whenever prices go back up again, because they always do and they always will continue to go up. If you have that in your strategy, I think buying is always going to be the better option. But if you can't, and you know that in 2 years you got to sell it, potentially losing so much money, then, renting might be honestly the better option. So
for me, if I know me and Jess have talked about this, if the only time we would buy something that's move-in ready is if we loved every aspect of that place. Paint is one thing. Paint, the wall, the colors can be, that's something simple that we can handle ourselves. But say everything is new. Floors, windows, kitchen, bathrooms, everything's new. If every single aspect of the bathrooms and the kitchen are what we're looking for, then we would go into trying to buy that.
And that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Not many of those.
What we have found where everything is 100% minus paint to our liking, out of 100, I would say 2.
And now the price of those 2.
Insanity.
Exactly.
Because in that price is not only the rehab costs, but the profit for who's flipping it. And in my eyes, again, not everybody's handy. Not everybody wants to deal with it. If you don't want to deal with it, go ahead. If you're not super picky, go ahead. Buy the move-in ready. Do it because it's fine, right? It's what it's all about personal preference and happiness. But if you want to look at how to save money and do things that way, well, we have multiple people in direct family who are in construction. We know friends who do rehabbing and have like basically we have multiple contacts for general contractors, for electricians, for painters, for tiles,
Yep.
for everything. So at that point, we're only looking to buy a place to rehab because the cost is way
Much
less,
cheaper.
and we could go in there and design it exactly how we want to. And
Yeah, the flip, right?
the flip, and not worry about like when are we going to, like, if we went in and bought something move-in ready, but we still want to redo the kitchen because we don't like the countertops and we don't like the cabinets and we don't like how big or small the island is if there is one. Well, now we're trying to figure out when are we going to demo a kitchen and get it in, and also finding a contractor that can fit in a job of doing just a kitchen, right? The more and more I talk to contractors, at least around the city, they don't like the little one-off jobs where it's going to be like 2-3 days because
Everybody wants to make that big money
they
right
want
off the bat.
they want a longer contract where it's like, all right, we're going to demo a kitchen and 2 bathrooms or 3 bathrooms and potentially do an unfinished basement into a finished basement, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they're looking for. So it's easier to potentially find a flip and get a contractor locked down for 2 months to get it all done, or 3 months, versus buying something move-in ready, just needing to do some of the kitchen, and now you got to wait 6 months or a year for a contractor to fit in. All right, I have a week open here. We'll do it then.
Right.
And now your materials might be more than in 6 months or a year, like with COVID. Before COVID happened,
For sure.
price of lumber and everything, obviously there was the shortages everywhere.
I think lumber was like 4x at the peak.
Or
From what
I thought it was even higher.
Maybe it was 5, but I think 5 was the max. But that's a lot. If you were
If
paying
you're-
$10K, now you're paying 50.
Now imagine building a whole house on a lot from scratch. You're
Yeah.
5 times as much if you're going framing and not masonry.
Well, yeah, because
like
we're building right now, and the lumber alone is like 40-something thousand. It's still not the low, right? But it's dropped significantly. So at the peak, at least double from what it is now. I think triple. So you're looking at an extra almost 100 grand that you were paying at the peak. See, now if you made that mistake of building at that time, that's the same thing as buying that overpriced property and then,
But it's
losing
not a
so much
mistake.
money. It's not a mistake.
it's just a unfortunate series of events that happened that you couldn't foresee.
Yeah, but I mean, it's tough to be in that situation because you always want to think like, how can you do things where it makes most sense money-wise, right? At that time, what would you do? If you have loans, you're stuck because you're paying loans every single month. So you have to finish the project, right? If you
that's where
don't have loans, that's when you can be like, okay, I'll wait it out, right? And maybe in a year it'll drop. So in that case, it could be a mistake if you do it and you don't have any loans, right? And because you could have waited out. But then again, nobody knows what's going to happen. Maybe they could have kept going up. It's always a tough call.
Well, the government stepped in there and helped with, I don't know how it was with housing, but obviously with student loans, they did the pauses, and I know there were stimulus checks, obviously, that people got, but yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I've mentioned it before on a previous episode. Me and Kevin were talking like about how during 2019, 2020, right before the pandemic hit, we're like, ooh, or even going into the pandemic, we're like, ooh, prices of properties are high. Like, we'll wait till it drops.
And when, 2019?
Yeah, right around there,
Before.
2020, right before, and even leading into it, like the first 6 months of the pandemic. We're like, wow, prices are high. They're going to drop, you know. And now we're looking back. I'm on Zillow, and I'm like,
Should have done it.
prices of condos are 100 to double, triple the price that they were back then. I mean, it's come down since.
Yeah, now it's come down for sure.
It's come down since like a year or two ago when it was absolute madness. Like realtors were making money hand over fist.
I think the good news is that it's getting better, because when I check, I could also see a lot more inventory, you know, less bids, less people fighting on things, I would say. But still, those like 1 in every 100 that come out that just everybody wants, because there is not many of those. I don't know when that's going to end, because that people are fighting for those houses like crazy. Those are the done ones that you would want to be like, I like that house, I'm ready to move in, right? Because when we were looking at a house, I think this was a year and a half ago, there was a house that was like $480,000, I think, where I was like, wow, this is pretty much remodeled. It's overpriced for the location and for what it was, but it's the best thing you can get for around that price. So at that point, I was like, damn, I don't even want to pay for this house that much, but it's the best thing you can get at this time, maybe. But guess what? We passed up on it, and I checked like a couple of weeks later, and that house sold like 60 or 70,000 over asking. I was like, wow, for that house, no way I would have ever paid that much money for that house, because I was already thinking it's way overpriced for what it was at the original price. But people are still, you know, bidding on things like that, which is crazy. And I still see it now. So I don't think that's stopping anytime soon on houses like that.
No. And I was asked a question like about a year ago that really kind of, I didn't think about it a lot before, but it completely made sense. It's, would you rather buy a house with a high price, like overpriced, with a low mortgage rate, or would you rather buy a house that's at value or undervalued with a ridiculous mortgage rate of, let's say, 10, 12, 15%? And I was like, well, I'd take the overpriced with a low mortgage rate. And they're like, that it doesn't make sense, because the house, yeah, statistically, real estate has gone up, but there are obviously times where like the market corrects and you lose value. And with a mortgage rate at 3%, there's not much lower that you can honestly go. If you buy something that's at value or undervalued at a really high interest rate, in a year or two, you could always refi and change that mortgage rate if it drops, right? If it goes up to like 10 and then goes down to 6 over 2 years, when it drops to 6, you could refi and get it at 6. And it's much better to do it that way because you have options there. The other way, not so much, because it's overpriced.
So much. It's already overpriced.
And you have the lowest mortgage possible, or it can't really get much lower.
So you think that currently buying is?
I still, at current, it's what? Mid-May we're in, right? I don't know when we'll release this one, but as of today, it's May 18th. I still believe prices are too high.
Too high.
The rate's high, right? But it's not at a place where I'm like, okay, property is low enough where I'm going to jump on something and I don't care how high the mortgage rate is.
And the thing is, everybody pretty much will have a mortgage, right? More people will have a mortgage than people paying outright with cash, right? So I think the people that are paying with cash, I think this video is pretty much not for them, right?
Right.
Because that opens up a lot more opportunities if you're paying cash. But if you're doing mortgages, then right now, I think the only way for it to make sense is you have to find a deal that gives you the value, right?
Or if you're putting 50% cash down.
Very much, right? To keep
It's-
the mortgage low where you could refinance it later.
Right.
Hoping that it comes down sometime in the next 5 years or something, right?
But how many people have $250,000 on a $500,000 house to just put
Right.
down?
Not
Like,
that many, especially if you're younger, right?
for sure.
So it's tough. You have to find that deal. The deal is the most important part, which it's the hardest thing to get right now.
The best place to look, foreclosures, short sales,
And there's a lot more of
and
them coming
auctions.
out right now.
And auctions too. Yeah, especially because people jumped into things.
Overpaid, small down payments,
And-
losing their jobs.
And the banks are now taking it back. But again, if you're not big into like real estate investing, you got this video should be like a starting point in getting your mind started
Prepared.
on that, prepared, and looking into how. And it's not. You're not going to be a real estate investor and like change your career into it. If you want to, great. You need to know real estate investing if you want to beat out the true real estate investors who are always looking for those deals. That's their bread and butter. That's their business because they've been doing it for years. They know so much. If you want to be able to do this method to get your chance to buy a property and call it your home, you got to know the ins and outs of that world. So you are prepared on who you're potentially going into to fight on these short sales, mortgages,
Right.
auctions especially.
Right. The good part is that usually if you want to buy it for yourself, you can pay a little bit extra over the person that's going to flip it, and try to make money on it. That's the good part because those folks try to check every 5,000 counts. It goes to them, right? But this is your house that you're paying for. So sometimes it's okay to pay a little bit more than that other person wants to pay because they're looking at profits, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at a home, so that's okay to overpay a little bit. But it's tough. So right now, I think if you cannot find a deal, it honestly might be better to just keep renting until you can find that deal. And in my opinion, those deals are going to happen and they're going to come because like we just discussed, the foreclosures are happening. There's more of them now than there was, a year ago, and there's going to be more.
There's also rent to own opportunities. Like if you can find a place where you're renting and your payment kind of goes towards ownership and paying that down directly to the homeowner, there's opportunities like that too. But again, it goes into finding what you want and your happiness in that.
Yeah, when you're buying right now, you have to know what you want and you have to figure out the best way right now to do it.
It's also hard because there is very little government regulation on businesses buying up properties.
And that's what is also making it tough right now with Airbnb.
Airbnb, overseas investors from like different countries, they come in with big money and they keep putting up high rises everywhere, and that's kind of how the rents get controlled, right?
Yep.
It's insanity. I think we have obviously booking Koala, and we have the ability to buy up properties like that as well. I mean, I think sure there could be a cap on it, like 3 properties, 4 properties max. And that's it. I'm sure there would be loopholes somewhere.
Always gonna be
There's always going to be a loophole, but I really do think there should be very strict government regulation on businesses and corporations being able to buy, I believe, at least single family homes and townhomes because obviously somebody needs to own like
big buildings.
big building, high rises and stuff. Like the big money needs to come from somewhere.
Yeah, maybe I agree with you on that one, since I'm always thinking from a business perspective, and a lot of the times I agree on that side. But I think like, yeah, maybe
And again,
there
don't
should be-
eliminate it completely.
Yeah,
like
just
you
have
could,
some kind of.
but there's got to be
regulation.
some freaking regulation, because
At least for those single family ones.
for
I
single
think
family
so.
homes, where are people are getting forced into.
But I think they are doing that. I think the regulations are coming. I think Airbnb's fighting big regulations right now. They don't want them to pass. So like property owners don't have multiple, or they might have two in this state that are allowed. I think that is tightening, which I think that's the big problem
there's
right now.
state regulations that are coming out being like, these towns, like there's no Airbnb is no more. You cannot, whoever's had one can, I guess, stay.
Yeah.
But no new
more.
ones can be put up for Airbnb. I mean, for Christ's sake, when we went to Scottsdale last year, I think Scottsdale, Arizona is
Like
that
all Airbnbs?
75%, 80% Airbnbs. It's
But
absolutely.
that's a little different, because those were like huge, right? Or at least the ones we stayed. So
That's
there's
where
probably
yeah.
there's probably a lot smaller houses that are just being rented out. Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, it's a huge problem. But I think there will be brighter days ahead, because I think a lot of those Airbnbs are struggling right now, since right now money's tightening everywhere. People are traveling less, booking vacations less, and those people that really had it easy with Airbnbs like 2 years ago, because they were flooded with guests, they could charge whatever they want. I think they're kind of, a lot of these people that bought houses during these times, that's where a lot of those foreclosures will happen, or where they're going to be forced to sell these houses because there's no more guests coming or at least they lose half of the business. The payments are higher than the profits that they're making. A lot of those houses are going to be exchanging hands. It's just who's going to be buying them up.
And you know what's going to be interesting to see? A lot of Airbnbs, when they're doing the rehabs to make it an Airbnb, what do? They make it nice aesthetically, but what the quality of these things
Always
are not.
cheap.
It's the cheapest thing that you could put in. So now, let's say they got to go resell it. They got to put it on the market and sell it. You're not going to get your higher value,
No, they're
because
not.
it's all cheap crap that they put in. And don't get me wrong, I occasionally like to stay in Airbnbs, especially if I'm not going to be in a hotel a long time. But as of now, a hotel is cheaper than staying in an Airbnb. And guess what?
Depends how you stay though, because I see on Airbnb you could rent someone's like room now for
Sure.
like $20.
Sure.
But I don't know how many people want to do that.
And depending on location, where you're looking too, right? But with a hotel, every day room service or the housekeeping comes in, turns over the room, fresh towels, fresh sheets every day.
And you kind of could rely on that, right?
And you rely on that. You get, depending on where you go, most every place has a breakfast of some sort downstairs. Here, you got to clean up yourself. It's like you're staying in your own house. I get it. You don't have to deal with other people, but you don't really have to deal with a lot of other people too, unless you're staying in an all-inclusive resort and you're staying there for majority of the time, right? And even then, I've been seeing all-inclusive resorts are cheaper than Airbnbs. It's crazy.
I
Same
feel
with like taking a cab right now versus Uber and Lyft. Cabs are cheaper than Ubers and Lyfts, and honestly,
it's always like a
more
cycle,
reliable.
right?
Yeah.
First, like Airbnb, Uber gets cheaper, like Netflix and Amazon Prime, and then all of a sudden, once they get all the users, they start to get more expensive than what they were originally kind of supposed to be doing, right? Giving you things at a budget, and then I guess maybe the other, like cable right now. Well, there's no cable right now, right?
No, there's Comcast. There's very few. There's very
few.
Very few of like Dish Network, Comcast, which Comcast, they own so many of the little guys too. at this point that it's
Yeah,
all
so it's
Comcast,
like, yeah, it's-
DirecTV, and AT&T. Those are the four that I know.
Yeah.
And then everything else is streaming.
But anyways, I feel like Airbnb now is just, in my opinion, it's good when you want the experience. Like with a group of people, you want to book like a nice house or something with the pool and go. That's when I feel like Airbnb has the edge. But I don't know. I prefer a hotel as well nowadays.
For sure, because there's less you have to deal with, and the fees that Airbnb hosts slap on top of you too. Like I understand a cleaning fee, a standard cleaning fee, but you gotta there some of these rules and stuff that I've read on some of these Airbnb hosts is like you gotta clean before the cleaners come. What the hell am I paying $300 for then? Why do I have to clean? Like obviously I'll make sure I'm not a slob. I'm going to put stuff that belongs in the garbage in the garbage, but you're telling me to take out the garbage and strip the bed and all that. What the hell? What? Like I paid to
Someone might be a slob though, so you never know, I guess.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I'm curious. I'm curious to what our viewers prefer more. Are they hotel people or Airbnb people? So drop a comment and let us know if you are for or against Airbnb and what you prefer, one or the other.
so to end the video, renting right now, you would say, unless you can find a good deal, right?
Yeah, and even that's very, very hard.
Very hard. But I'll add that I do think there will be a lot more
Better days
opportunities
are to
coming.
come.
Yeah,
Better days are to
absolutely.
come, and I think sooner rather than later.